the uncle that stayed with us, whose mother didn't make it, when he stayed with us, he kind of like we didn't hang out with him a lot. We didn't see him that often before he came to live with us. Now we see him like once a month or whatever. He comes to visit, he talks to us, and what have you. I guess he learned then that something was weird with our family dynamic. So when my mom moved up here, we are 3 minutes, not 3 minutes. Oh my god, if we were 3 minutes away, she'd be here all the time. We're 3 miles away from the Banshee. And when my mom moved up here, it confused everyone in our family because they were like, "What? I don't understand why you would move closer to the daughter that you can't get along with in any sort of fashion." And so when my uncle came to visit, the one who lived with us one time when they first moved up here, apparently he pulled my mom aside and he was like, how come you decided that you were going to move really close to the daughter that you can't stand and vice versa? I don't get it. How come you came up here? And apparently my mother looked at him very seriously and said, well, the Banshee, in brackets, didn't say that because no one else calls her the Banshee, but me and my friend, in brackets, because she needs more help. Well, I think you guys have got it by now, but in case you didn't, my mother has a really funny way of helping people. Helping people.
When someone meets my family, they inevitably ask, "How are you, you?" Why is that, you ask? Have I got a story for you?
Before I tell you my next funny/terrible story, I need to explain something to you. Now, my mother has a great, great fear. And you know how, like, some people are like, oh, when you're little, you might be afraid of the dark, and it might scare you. You might, be afraid of dogs because you had a traumatic experience as a child. My mother's greatest fear is having other people think poorly of her. Let me go a little bit more into depth with that. My mother can't stand, like, the thing that makes my mother the angriest is if you start a fight with her in public, or I guess you usurp her authority kind of dealy, but she can't stand to have strangers think poorly of her. So, like, if you start a fight with her in public or an argument, oh, you're in for it later. Believe me, you'll be in for it. She can't take the fact that other people might look down on her. Like, I would understand if it was like your boss or something seeing you being a shitty mom or seeing you argue with people in your family, but most of the time it's like you can't talk to her in the supermarket because she thinks that anything you say to her, regardless of what it is, the words that came out of my mouth were, "Hey mom, can we have this cereal?" But to her it was, "You're a shitty person and a shitty mother. You must suck at everything. Can't even fulfill your children's needs." So we don't really say anything at all to my mother in public because you can say whatever you want, but she's gonna hear terrible things, and then everything is over. You're done. You're done. You're done with everything. So she can't really. She, Nobody really wants to talk to her in public or go anywhere in public with her because she'll freak out like that over absolutely nothing. It happens all the time. One of the places nobody ever wants to go with my mother is out to a restaurant. First of all, that's weird in and of itself. To have my mother like go out to a restaurant with you, it must be a special occasion. Like this one time, she was about to go on vacation or whatever, and I was like, "I'm gonna go out to eat. I'll talk to you later before you leave for sure." And she was like, "What? You're going out to eat?" And I was like, "Yeah. Why is this upsetting?" And she screamed at me for a while because you only go out to eat on special occasions. And so, like, you can't suggest to my mother, "Hey, let's go out to eat," like on any given night, because she'll be like, "No, what's today? Nothing special." So nobody really wants to go out with her to a restaurant to eat or anything like that in any given situation because she reacts like that normally. But the problem is, even if you get her to go with you to the restaurant, her greatest fear plays into everything. So you can't really have a good dinner with her because you can't really talk to her in public because she hears terrible things, even if that's not what you're saying. So this one time, all right, let me back up a little while. Well, actually, it would be forward in time from the time that the whatever. You know, I'm not good with numbers. I suck at numbers, math, blah blah blah. So anyway, when Liz and I were dating, uh, one of the things was, well, first of all, my mom does this thing where if you're new, well, not even if you're new, my mother does this thing where if you eat, uh, like she has to cook for you, and if you take away that privilege or right, I don't know what to call it, from her, she gets insanely angry. So, like, when we first moved here, my friends that I grew up with, when they come to visit, she'd be like, "Hey, I'm gonna cook for you," and we go out to eat, and I'd be like, "You don't have to cook for us. We're going out. Like, we're fine. You don't need to feed us. We're all adults here. We can go buy food. Like, it's fine. Whatever." And this made my mother so angry that someone would not, we'd be here and not eat her food. And I suppose it has something to do with, like, oh, I'm a parent, I have to provide for my children and what have you. But, like, the first or second times we went out to eat, she would still make food for me. So when we'd come back, she'd be mad. "You ate? I made you food!" And she'd make me sit down at the table and eat it, even if I just came from food. "I made this for you. You're gonna eat it." And, like, my friends would have to, like, go in another room and wait for me to eat. And it's not like when we moved up here, I was, like 5 or 6. No, no. When we moved up here, I was like 22. Well, maybe 21, 2021, maybe not 22, but you get the idea. I was an adult. Like, that's not how you should be treating people. So when Liz came here for the first time, my mom was like, "Let me cook for you guys." And I pulled Liz aside. I was like, "I'm going to explain something to you. If you say, yes, I would like you to cook for us this one time, you're going to set a precedent for us where we must be here to eat every time." And I was like, "No, nobody would do that." And I was like, "Yes, yes, they would." So because we sat and ate my mom's food the first time, every time after that, it was like a fight to get out and go out to eat because it was not a special occasion and we must eat her food. If you have been watching for a while, you may suspect that while my mother is a wonderful cook, many of the ingredients that she uses are long expired, sometimes rotten, and what have you. So a lot of people have trouble or anxiety eating things here, which makes sense. It definitely makes sense. I bear no ill will towards them and their want to go elsewhere for food. But yeah, that's a thing. But what I really wanted to get at was, so you know how my mom, I've explained this to you, my mother has a thing where she doesn't want to get into a fight in public because other people may think poorly of her and her family and what have you. So when Liz and I were dating, one time my mom was like, "Why don't we go on a double date?" And I was like, "That's a terrible idea. I don't like this." No, it wasn't a double date. Sorry. My mom was like, "Why don't we go out to eat? We'll all go. You and Liz can come." And I turned to Liz and I was like, "Whatever you do not, I repeat, do not try and pay for dinner." And Liz was like, Okay. So there's this thing where, okay, so in my family, well, not even my blood relatives, but me and my brother, the Banshee's husband, brother-in-law, I'm call him brother, it's easier. Me and him, we have very efficient digestive systems. So, like, when he eats food, 15 minutes later, he's on the toilet. What goes in must come out. I'm a little quicker than him, So the moment I'm done with food, I have to run to the bathroom, no matter what. That'll come into play in a lot of later stories. But while Liz and I were dating, occasionally I would have to run to the bathroom right after dinner, and she would get the check. And I was like, do not do that to my mother. Do not. Do not. And she was like, okay. And I'm going to tell you guys why that's a terrible idea. So, rewind a year or two ago, it was after we moved up here. We went to Red Lobster as a family. And we're there, right? And my mom, the favorite child was there too. So it was me, my mom, favorite child, Banshee. We're all eating dinner together at Red Lobster. We're having a fun time. And my mom and my sister start arguing with one another. And as you may have guessed, this plays into my mother's greatest fear, where other people may think poorly of her. So that cannot happen. So they start arguing and fighting. And they're really fighting. They're yelling at each other across the table. And I'm just like trying to get as far away from them as possible because they're getting angrier and angrier. And the check comes. And now the Banshee has a thing where she wants to be, she's kind of a glory hound. And so like she wants to be in there and get all the praise. She needs all the praise. It all has to be for her. So when the check comes, even though it was supposed to be my mom's treat, she goes to grab it. And, you know, sometimes you might argue over like a check or whatever amongst your family. But instead of being like, hey, give that to me, my mother's reaction was she had a pen. There was a pen on the table because they're going to write with they're going to use credit cards. There's a pen in the thingy. My mother grabs the pen, flips it upside down, stabs my sister's hand into the table. And I'm not saying like it was like a ha ha ha. No, it was kuh. It didn't go straight through, but it broke the skin. So now my sister's bleeding. Her hand's on the check. My mother's got a pen over it. And my sister's like, ha ha. And my mom's like, give me the check. And my sister's like, okay. And the two of them start fucking screaming at each other. After the initial shock of being stabbed with a pen is worn off, the Banshee goes back into her usual. After the shock of having the pen stabbed into her hand wears off, the Banshee goes into her usual routine of way above human normal decibel rating levels of speech. So the two of them just start fucking screaming at each other. And this plays into my mother's greatest fear of having other people at the restaurant, you know, think poorly of them. So she starts screaming at my sister. And they're pretty much matched in decibel rating at this point. And then my mother, like, changes her whole demeanor and tone and starts talking to my sister, who's, all right, we've been through this. My sisters are much older than me. My oldest sister's 15 years older than me, so she was not a child at this time. If I was like 20, you guess that she was not a child at this time. My mother starts talking down to her like she's a child. And as you well know, the Banshee doesn't take things normally like other people do. So she hears like the absolute worst possible thing. She internalizes the absolute worst possible intention of whatever you say to her. So my mother's now talking down to her like she's a child in the middle of the restaurant, like a petulant, terrible child. And this is destroying my sister. And they're still screaming at each other and what have you. And finally, like, my mother's like foaming at the mouth, and she's like, "This is why I can't take you anywhere!" Story I forgot to tell, which is why I'm wearing different clothes, because I filmed the rest of the episode a different day, and then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this story. Gotta do it. So, you know, we were talking about how my mom does this thing where, well, my sister, the Banshee, when she hears things, the things that come in, it kind of runs in my family where people hear things and they take the absolute worst scenario that those words could possibly represent and internalize that. So my sister does this thing, the Banshee, where she tells stories without context. Now, I'm going to talk about this a lot later on in another episode. But she doesn't give context. She just starts talking because she expects everyone to know exactly what's going on up here. Which most of the time is not what... It's like a cartoon when you have that one stupid character on the team and everyone's like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And they say something totally different and off the wall. That's how my sister talks all the time. So yeah, this one time we were out at dinner, or we went out to eat. It was a special occasion, I'm sure. And we had my mom, the Banshee, me, and another aunt that's not really my aunt. She's actually my mom's cousin, but we still call her aunt anyway. And we call her the crazy aunt because she's been committed multiple times. Because she cray, but not like in a murderous crazy kind of way. It's just like, haha, I don't know what the world is kind of crazy. So we were out to dinner with them, and my mom and the Banshee get into an argument, what have you. And the Banshee just keeps talking. She just keeps talking. And she does this thing a lot where she says something like she asks you a question, but then she tells you the answer to the question that she asked. And the answer that she gives you is wrong because she also has no idea how the world works. Like at all. Like at all. So she'll ask you a question, and when you go to give her an answer, she'll be like, blah, 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 and she'll tell you her answer to the question, which is wrong. That she made up because it's the way she sees the world, which is not the way normal human beings see the world at all. At all. At all. So my sister keeps talking and she says something, and then she starts giving an answer to a question that she asked that's wrong. And my mom is like, shut up! Just shut up! And my sister's like, and she drops off. She retreats into herself. My mom goes, you should probably think before you open your mouth. I'm just gonna put that out there. Just think before you speak. You should try it sometime. And that made my sister not talk for like a whole week and a half. And again, I want you to understand, my sister the Banshee is not a child. She's an adult. She's 15 years older than me. She's an adult. And still when she acts like that normally, yes. But when she hears that, she internalizes the worst possible meaning. So she took that as mother was calling her stupid for the rest of her life and what have you. And I'm sure that's going to sting. I'm sure it's still inside of her and it'll be inside of her forever. So yeah, that's kind of why, another reason why nobody, so let me get back to the story of the terrible dinner, which you guys will be caught up on in a second. Okay. Future me says hello to past me and whatever. Time. I'm not going to create a time paradox here. That would be silly. Okay. And back to the real story. At this point, my sister's like shrunk down. She's retreated into her child self. She's all tiny and small. And like everyone at the tables all around us are looking at us. And I'm like, what's going to happen now? Like she's already been set off. What's going to happen now? I'm like looking around. Everyone's looking at us. I'm like, oh no, something's about to happen. And then my mother's switch flips. And all of a sudden, she's wonderful and nice and doesn't want to talk to any of us anymore. But we're done with this evening. And I'm just like, what? You were there? Huh? That's apparently her defense mechanism to having other people stare at her and think that she's a terrible person and that we all don't get along and what have you, is to just switch and pretend that she's like a wonderful, we're all happy and what have you, because other people can't think poorly of us. I could understand, again, if it was, somebody you were gonna see again, like a boss, a coworker, but like with random people, I don't understand. It doesn't matter. Why would you care what some dude you pass by in the cereal aisle in the supermarket thinks of you? Like, unless he's like Child Protective Services, that I could get behind, I would understand that. But just like random people, they can't possibly see her not perfect. And it's a weird ideal because no one in our family is anywhere near perfect. Like, there's not a single person who I would say would be perfect. And sorry, the bedspread is really, really, really hot. It's really hot today, and my legs are all sweaty, and I'm slipping around and what have you. So I'm gonna sit like Spider-Man for a bit. But yeah, I don't understand why that's her greatest fear. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, why do you care so much what other people think? And again, I mean, I don't think my mother thinks like normal humans do. I don't get it. I don't care. Like, I understand if you want to, if you don't want to cause a scene or whatever because you don't want to inconvenience other people, but that's definitely not it with my mother. It's just that she can't have other people think poorly of her. And I feel like if that's the way you run your life, you're never going to get anywhere. And maybe that's part of the problem.
Hey there, guys and gals. Thanks again for watching, as always. If you click the link on the left, you'll be taken to the previous video. If you click the link on the right, you'll be taken to a playlist where you can watch them all. And I feel like we should go back to the Banshee because I feel like she's the one that sticks out in your mind the most. Because, I mean, I feel like for you guys, she sticks out the same way. Satan!
Leave this place!